to not like last time where we were 15 minutes in and it was like, oops, it's not live.
All right, Skip, you are now the host. I am leaving. I think Virginia is also leaving. Bye.
Bye, Virginia.
I'll see you all at 7 o'clock. Back on Zoom.
And welcome to AV Geeks at the Hunt Library, not at the Hunt Library. I'm Jason Evans Groth, Digital Media Librarian for NC State University Libraries. This is our 12th semester of this series that partners NC State University folks with Raleigh's premier community film archivists at AV Geeks to discuss vintage educational and classroom films. Let's talk about AV Geeks. Skip Belsheimer is the founder of AV Geeks and is also an NC State University alum and has been for the last few decades, collecting films made throughout the last century, mostly 16 millimeter educational, training, and other sorts of how-to movies. He does an incredible job of sharing these with the world and currently houses over 36,000 physical films at the AV Geeks archive here in Raleigh, and shares them as stock footage for films and exhibits, as research material, and during public events such as this. Today's theme is When We Were Green, and we're very excited to welcome our guests, Lindsay Batchelor and Carla Davis, both from the NC State University Sustainability Office. Thank you so much for joining us today. So real quick, Lindsay Batchelor is the director of the NC State University Sustainability Office. And in her 17 years at the university, she served in a variety of sustainability-related roles, becoming sustainability director in 2019. She leads a comprehensive campus sustainability program that establishes and oversees progress towards sustainability goals and benchmarks, engages students, raises awareness, and facilitates campus-wide involvement in sustainability. She's a graduate of University of North Carolina at Asheville. And Carla Davis is the communications coordinator for the NC State University Sustainability Office, where she manages communications and marketing efforts and develops sustainability outreach and education events. And she's a graduate of University of South Carolina and Mercer University, and previously worked in nonprofit communication. So welcome to both of you. We're so glad you're here. Quick reminder that, first of all, we are kicking off kind of early. This is like a pre-party for Clean Energy Week. So we're very excited to do that. If you're watching this during Energy Week, welcome to Clean Energy Week. We're happy to have you. And a reminder that over 200 of AV Geeks compilations are available for checkout from the libraries. If you like this, you can go, but you can just borrow some without commentary. But you can also visit previous episodes of this particular event at the library's website, or just visit avgeeks.com or search for AV Geeks in YouTube or at archive.org for just straight up educational content and other ephemera from Skip and his crack team of AV Geeks. And so I'll hand things over to Skip to kick us off. Thank you so much. Looking forward to this.
Thank you, Jason. Because of the way Zoom is set up, there's definitely going to be a lag. People are going to watch and say, like, the lip sync isn't quite right. Well, that's just Zoom's fault. But also, we didn't get a chance to really see who our experts are. So, Lindsay, could you say hi first? And then Carla, could you say hi so we could see your faces?
Evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for joining us on a Friday night. Happy to be here.
Awesome. I didn't know this was going to be a pre-party. I would have brought drinks and chips, etc. But it's always kind of festive here at AV Geeks. And the name of the show is actually The Last Time We Were Green, and not just When We Were Green.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Because there was a time, and some of you might be old enough to remember this, you might have been young, but in the 70s, when there was a lot of talk about sustainability, a lot of talk about alternative power sources, and I have a lot of films from the 70s that kind of talk about that. And that's when we were in the midst of a pretty horrible energy crisis, and we were really beginning to take note of the impact that many of our energy sources were having on the environment. And so there's quite a few films that kind of address that. What's interesting is many of them address smoke and the things that you see, and they don't talk about CO2. And they talk about litter, but they don't talk about what happens when plastics break down to little tiny things. But it's all about the visual of what you see, you smell, etc., and not about the stuff that you don't see. So that's kind of an interesting difference. But this first one we're going to watch, we're going to go back to the late 40s, early 50s. And this film is a wonderful film that's talking about how great petroleum is for our country and about what drives the American way of life. So the first film, 24 Hours of Progress. Enjoy.
The production of oil is a measure of American progress. As our nation grows, so grows our need for petroleum. This year, every 24 hours, 6.5 million barrels of petroleum will be drawn from the earth by our producing oil companies. How will it all be used? Let's start at midnight and watch what happens on any single day. Let's say it's Tuesday. In the early hours down on the Gulf of Mexico, a new source of oil is being sought. If this well comes in, it will not only help to fuel planes, cars, and ships, and make us strong in arms, it will also serve America in many ways of which we may not be aware. It even plays a part in the operating room where petroleum byproducts appear as the drugs, the alcohol, and anesthetics that may help to save a life or start one. It's morning now, 7:31. The sun is shining somewhere in the Middle West on the construction of an 8-lane superhighway. The ancient Romans were road builders too, but they had slaves to do the work. Today we push our roads just where we want them to go. Now the strength in a man's back or in his arms is not important. It's the strength he controls at his fingertips that counts. Now at a West Coast airport, the 815 plane bound east across the continent is being fueled with gasoline from one of thousands of competing oil companies. Competition among these companies assures our progress, just as competition helped make the change from the Conestoga wagon to the Constellation. We Americans can compete because we're free to fly 3,000 miles across one united land with only a ticket and a baggage check as our passport. In the United States, 9 o'clock in the morning means time for school. Mrs. George W. Martin starts on her first errand of the day, to get gasoline for the car. To Mrs. Martin, her service station is the oil industry. 95% of America's service stations are run by independent businessmen, like Ed Felix. He is an oil man, and like the industry he represents, he knows all about competition. He knows that to compete successfully, he must do more than sell gasoline and oil. He must give service, the kind that will make his station the favorite in town. As the day moves on, and as the Ed Felixes all over the country serve their public, the American farmer is also using up petroleum and many of its products. Oil does scores of jobs farmers would once have thought were miracles. Today, with petroleum, a farmer can fight the odds of nature instead of giving in to them. It becomes easy now to see why new oil must constantly be found. Out here in California, a geophysical crew is taking the first step, making a seismograph survey of what a piece of land looks like underground. They start by placing dynamite in shallow holes filled with water. Then they explode the dynamite. The sound waves are recorded as they echo off the underground formation. But the seismograph picture just tells where oil might be. The only way of actually finding it is to drill. On this Tuesday afternoon in West Texas, a producing company is getting ready to do just that, drill a well. They know that 8 out of every 9 wells drilled in new areas turn out to be dry holes. But even then, they're willing to risk as much as $1 million on a single well, just on the chance of striking oil. Between the crude oil from the ground and finished petroleum products is the refinery. Just 4 decades ago, a refinery was a primitive still making mostly kerosene. Today, some of these great plants employ thousands of people. To many an American community, their establishment and growth has meant new economic life. Every day, vast quantities of oil move out by tank car and by great pipeline systems. One of the biggest carriers of oil is the modern tanker. This one will carry 5 million gallons of petroleum products. While the tanker is loading in California, an oil barge is heading up the Mississippi for the docks of an independent jobber. And in New York at 3 p.m. this Tuesday, the SS America is taking on fuel. Since petroleum provides the power for our ships of peace and ships of war, oil power means sea power for our nation. Power for the sea is also power for the land. The automobile has been a major factor in the growth of our country. To meet the demands of motorists who drive 1 billion miles a day, oil canning plants also work around the clock. It seems no other people in the world want so much to just get going when they have a little time. Maybe it's just that no other people can get going so easily. The oil scientists are pace setters in the race of progress, working with products still unnamed and some that are still unthought of. Our thousands of privately managed oil companies invest millions of dollars every year in research. Each company's objective is the same: discover a new product, perfect it, and get it on the market before the others do. They start with competition. What they create is progress. With the switch to another brand of gasoline, or with the purchase of a new detergent, a company has lost a customer. Another company has gained one. Our Mrs. Martin just today has already used some 87 petroleum products, including the plastic bacon wrapper and the wax of the milk carton. Mrs. Martin is the customer, and the customer is the boss of the oil industry. This Tuesday's daylight has almost gone. Electric power stations are getting ready for peak load. Even though the old oil lamp is a thing of the past, oil still helps light up America. Our Tuesday is ending. The air travelers from the west have crossed a whole continent in a few hours. But not for 1 mile were they out of sight of the men and women of the petroleum industry. The night shift at the refinery has taken over on the stills and fractionating columns. At Ed Felix's, there's still someone to give you service. At the well on the Gulf, the drilling bit, chewing at the rock beneath the bayou, may be closer to oil than it was last night. It is midnight again. Our Tuesday has waned and is gone. In the oil fields, the pump continues hour by hour throughout the 24. It pumps from Tuesday into Wednesday without a halt. Each day, every day, it brings us another 24 hours of progress, building our nation, guarding its security, assuring the future of America.
So, wow, oil, man. Oil is great. So, Carla, Lindsay, you're with the Sustainable Energy Department at NC State. NC State is a vast amount of buildings and things. So tell me, what is it? Wow, so many questions that I can ask you here. Tell me what does your department do? What are the goals of your department? Lindsay, you can start.
Sure. So yes, we're the sustainability office on campus, and really our mission is to be a hub of information, coordination, collaboration around all things that promote sustainability. So this is everything from how we operate our campus to what happens in the classroom to what happens for students outside the classroom. So we're all in each of those areas, and energy is a big piece of that. Functionally, we sit in the energy systems department, so Carla and I get a lot of interface with the folks who actually manage energy for NC State. And a lot of our goals are around lessening our impact related to our energy use. So we have energy conservation goals, we have a climate neutrality goal, and so our work is really around promoting and educating and helping our campus community understand what those goals are and why they're important.
So Carla, you're the communications coordinator. So what is Energy Week all about? Like, what can we expect if we participate in Energy Week at NC State next week?
Sure. So we're really excited about Energy Week. We've been planning it for about a year and a half, and we, of course, originally wanted it to be in person, but we're able to pivot a lot of those events to virtual. So we're still able to celebrate all the progress that we've made in energy and all the ways that we could, do other things in energy, despite being off campus. So there are about 10 events that are coming and next week, and it's everything from art about what energy means to you to a panel discussion about energy justice. There are students who've had submitted pitches that will be judged as a part of a pitch competition, like the best energy idea. There's an entrepreneurship panel where you'll be able to hear from current entrepreneurs in in the energy sector. So there's just all kinds of activities. So whatever your interest is, there's probably something there that you would be interested in.
Cool. So, this first film, 24 Hours of Progress, talked about how great petroleum is for us. And so NC State, at one point, you guys did some research, and NC State used a lot of oil at one point. So how did that, I guess we talked about steam tunnels as well. So how did the power get distributed, specifically related to the power plant?
Yeah, Skip, I think I can talk a little bit more about what happens now at NC State. We did do a little bit of research, and it was previously more oil. And now what happens on campus is we have we have several utility plants on campus. So just to kind of cite you in what our energy infrastructure is, it's a system of utility plants that distribute chilled water, electricity, and steam to all the buildings on campus. And our utility plants, 2 of them, we've been able to retrofit as a part of a major energy savings project to something called cogeneration. And cogeneration happens through using natural gas, and that natural gas is then turned into electricity through these combustion turbines, and turn into electricity, and the byproduct is steam. And so for NC State, this means that we're able to get 2 energy sources from one, and it's extremely efficient, especially for the scale that we need to produce energy for our campus.
So everything is, at all the buildings that are nearby the power plant, they're all these giant pipes of steam and chilled water. Is that what you're saying? Is this like
and electricity?
And electricity, of course. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
I can throw in some stats for you.
All right.
Because stats are fun. So we have about 21 miles of steam pipes on campus. So and all this is underground.
Right.
And we have about 19 miles of chilled water pipelines underground. So it's all stuff you're never going to see, but it's there and really vital to making sure that campus has reliable, quality energy.
Nice.
And one thing that, and Kyla might be able to jump in here with some specifics, because I know she's worked on this project, is that we're actually kind of at the beginning of a huge electrical distribution upgrade that's about to happen on campus. So kind of all of the tunnels that house the electrical wire have been there for a long time. Interestingly, back to around the 50s, and in some instances, some of them are quite old. And so we're about to go through a major upgrade on campus for this distribution system to actually be able to bring it up to speed and last for another 30, 40 years into the future.
Interesting. So we're going to watch the next film, but one of the things I'll want to talk about when we come back is, since this event is at the Hunt Library, quote unquote, the Hunt Library is one of the first buildings on campus, I guess. It's a green building. And so I'd like to, if we could talk a little bit about that, like what that entails. And it's a phenomenal space. It's really, really amazing. And are there other buildings that are being built or have already been built since Hunt Library that take advantage of that? So that's something to, let's watch this next film. This film is Energy for the Future. It was made in 1974. And the one thing of note about this is it's narrated by Ken Nordine. Ken Nordine was amazing voiceover actor. narrator, did a lot of Blue Jean commercials in the 80s, which some of you might recognize, but also did a lot of kind of jazz, spoken word jazz things where he would talk over. But he also worked for educational film companies. So 1974, we were in the midst of a pretty horrible energy crisis, and we're also looking at what we were doing to our environment, and it was like, you know what? Let's look and see what our other alternatives are, especially because we didn't seem to have control over how much we were paying for our oil at some point. And so we didn't like that. That was not good. So what are some alternatives? And so what we can do is we can watch and see what they came up with as alternatives, which kind of panned out and which ones didn't do so great. And then maybe also, like, were there any that were implemented on NC State campus? All right, so here's Energy for the Future.
Fossil fuel millions of years. Yet in little more than a century, our fuel-guzzling society of movement, comfort, and prosperity has begun to deplete the supplies. Petroleum will remain our most important source of fuel for the immediate future. But as the reserves of readily available oil and gas dwindle, we search for alternative sources of energy. Geothermal energy, the heat of the earth itself. Nuclear power, to tap the awesome energy of the atom. Less polluting and more efficient methods of using coal. Oil shale, a new source of fossil fuel. Even the power of the wind and the energy of the sun. These are some of the energy sources for the future. The energy of the sun, stored beneath the earth in the form of coal and lignite, is now being exploited with renewed enthusiasm. Coal is by far the most abundant of our fossil fuels, and much of it is accessible to existing mining techniques. Exploration and mapping of geological resources discloses that many billions of tons of coal lie beneath the United States landscape. Unfortunately, the use of coal has involved serious consequences for the environment. Strip mining techniques used to uncover coal have at some locations laid millions of acres of land to waste. The unfiltered burning of coal has released tons of toxic gas into the atmosphere. Now, the demand for energy and the passage of clean air laws have encouraged a new look at how coal is produced and consumed. This installation in Chicago, Illinois, is an experiment in a technique called coal gasification. The process converts coal into a clean-burning fuel, synthetic natural gas. In the future, it may enable us to exploit fully our abundant coal reserves without jeopardizing the quality of air. Another potential source of fossil energy is found where ancient seas deposited layer upon layer of sediment. This rock, rich with the remains of tiny marine organisms, is oil shale. To the Ute Indians of the American West, it is known as the rock that burns. It can be mined and processed to produce crude oil and gas. Geologists have found many large oil shale deposits in the United States. In total, these deposits are thought to hold more than 6 times our known reserves of crude oil. Not all of the shale can be exploited economically, but mining and processing of the rich Rocky Mountain deposits are already underway on an experimental basis. The techniques of oil shale processing have been known since the 1800s. Actually, the rock is not shale at all, and it does not contain oil. It is marlstone that contains a solid organic substance called kerogen. This apparatus simulates a commercial retort in which shale oil is processed. Heating crushed rock fragments causes the kerogen to vaporize. Oil vapors and gas rise to the top of the retort and condense. The end product is a thick liquid, crude shale oil. Commercially valuable byproducts such as hydrocarbon gas, minerals, and a variety of chemical compounds can also be produced in the process. Oil shale may be an important source of fossil fuel in the years ahead. But mining oil shale could scar the land. And because its volume actually increases during processing, waste disposal will be a serious problem. In addition, like all fossil fuels, oil shale is an inexhaustible resource. A source with longer range potential is the energy of the atom. Nuclear fission reactors are supplying increasing amounts of our electric power. And by the turn of the century, they may be supplying as much as 1/4. Like coal and oil, fuel used for nuclear fission must be extracted from the earth. Uranium. More than 30 million tons of accessible uranium ore are thought to exist in the western United States. Enormous quantities of this ore must be mined because the fission process requires a rare isotope of uranium, uranium-235. 1 kilogram of this high-grade ore will yield only about 7 grams of uranium-235. But those 7 grams will be capable of producing more electric power than 3 million times their weight in coal. Some experts predict that by the year 2000, high-grade uranium ore will become scarce and its cost will be prohibitive. Nuclear physicists are currently working on a solution to this problem, the fast breeder reactor, which can transform the abundant supplies of regular uranium into a fissionable fuel called plutonium. Like all fission reactors, however, the breeder reactor presents environmental dangers, the potential for a nuclear accident, and the production of highly poisonous radioactive wastes. Another nuclear energy alternative is the controlled fusion reactor. This is SILAC, an experimental nuclear facility in Los Alamos, New Mexico. Here, scientists are attempting to create a fusion reaction that will produce no waste and use common seawater as its fuel. The circular array of electromagnets will be used to contain a plasma of deuterium atoms which are extracted from the seawater. Tremendous temperatures are applied to the plasma to induce a fusion reaction, the same process by which the sun produces energy. If fusion reactions can be produced and controlled, the oceans of the world will be an almost limitless supply of fuel. But even today, there are energy sources that require no fuel at all. This power plant produces electricity from the natural heat of the Earth's interior. It is part of the Geysers geothermal power facility near San Francisco. Nestled away in a quiet wooded area of Northern California, the Geysers complex is unknown to the many who think geothermal power to be a dream of the future. But it has been in operation since 1960, and eventually it will generate enough electricity to serve the needs of more than 4 million people. Magma within the Earth heats groundwater and causes it to rise to geysers, or steam vents. wells are drilled to intercept this water and carry it to the surface. There, it vaporizes into steam, which drives electricity-generating turbines. Mapping of hot spring sites shows that many areas of the United States may be suitable for this type of geothermal exploitation. And experiments are now underway that will, if successful, make geothermal power available to an even greater number of regions. In New Mexico, engineers are using oil drilling techniques to sink a well into the interior of the earth. Their objective is not to find oil, but to reach the heat of an extinct volcano. Pipes will be sunk to a depth of about 2,400 meters, where geologists estimate temperatures to be as high as 500 degrees Celsius. Water pumped through the pipe will be heated and will rise naturally to the surface through a second well. Hot rock is known to exist fairly close to the surface at many sites in the western United States. Dry geothermal power could become an important regional supplement to fossil fuel and nuclear plants in the near future. The motion of the atmosphere is one of our most diffuse energy sources, and at Oklahoma State University, research is now underway that may result in the large-scale use of wind for generating electricity. Meteorologists have mapped several regions of the United States where wind is strong and consistent enough to make large-scale wind farming a possibility. This prototype equipment includes a special field generator that overcomes one of the biggest obstacles to wind farming. As wind speed fluctuates, the frequency of wind-generated current fluctuates along with it. But with the perfection of the new generator, the current frequency can be kept constant. This current can be fed into transmission lines to supplement conventional power sources. The use of the wind is, in effect, an indirect use of the Earth's most valuable energy source, the sun. This solar furnace, a device for the direct use of the sun's energy, was developed at the University of Florida Solar Laboratory. Here it is being used to make synthetic crystals, a process that requires enormous amounts of uncontaminated heat energy. The parabolic reflector concentrates sunlight at a focal point, where the furnace produces temperatures in excess of 3,800 degrees Celsius. In contrast to this solar cell, which uses the sun's light energy to produce electricity, and is at present far too costly for widespread general use, the heat energy devices at the University of Florida lab are simple and economical. These solar panels are constructed of copper plates and coils of copper tubing, through which water circulates. The plates and tubing are painted flat black and are enclosed in boxes with glass faces. The glass lets the sun's energy in, but does not let the infrared radiation reflected by the black surface out. This energy heats the circulating water, providing space heating, hot water, and electricity for small appliances in this house, which has been operating on solar energy for the past 20 years. The potential solar energy resource is greatest in the southern United States, and most of the country receives enough heat to at least supplement conventional energy sources. 1,200 kilometers north of Gainesville, near Baltimore, Maryland, an entire wing of the Timonium Elementary School is heated by solar energy. The system, which can store enough heat to last from 4 to 5 days, is saving about 200 liters of fuel oil every day. Entire communities are now being planned and developed to make maximum use of the sun's energy. The ZomeWorks complex in Albuquerque, New Mexico, is a model community that depends on the sun for all its heat and hot water needs. The technology of ZomeWorks is elegantly simple. Water is pumped from the ground by a conventional windmill to be heated in a solar panel. The walls of the structure can be lowered to expose large drums of water, which collect heat from the New Mexico sun and pass it to interior living spaces. In summer, the walls are kept closed, and the same drums provide a natural air conditioning system, insulating the interior from outside heat. Like the fast breeder reactor, the wind farm, and the dry rock geothermal power plant, ZomeWorks is a prototype for the future. In the present, even as we search for new sources of fossil fuel and attempt to conserve the supplies that remain, we must explore fully these energy alternatives. The era of cheap, readily available fossil fuels is coming to an end.
So did that voice sound familiar to you? Do you have a recollection of that, or am I just too old? Do you remember the Levi's jeans voiceover now?
I don't remember that, but that's great.
You didn't think I was going to ask you about whether you remembered an old Levi's commercial or not. Lots of technologies there that were explored, and certainly some of them have come up in recent conversations. Like fracking, it certainly was mentioned in there. Geothermal, solar, and then passive solar. The terminology is it LEED certified? Is that correct when we talk about a building?
Yes. LEED certified stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design.
So Hunt Library, where we are pretending like we are, what can you tell me about it, and as far as how it is using sustainable means to cool it and heat it, etc.?
Yes. So Hunt Library is a LEED certified building. It was completed in 2013. So it wasn't the first LEED building on our campus, but it was certainly one of the first few, one of the first 5 or 6 that we've done, and a couple of those were actually off campus, off main campus. So first large building for sure. So there's a few things about this building, and you can find this information, just FYI. If you're interested about a building and its sustainability features, you can find this on our sustainability website. So I'm literally looking at that now. And so the sustainability strategies for Hunt included a highly efficient chilled beam and a radiant panel HVAC system. Can't go in detail about that technology, but that is part of Hunt Library. It also has rooftop hot solar hot water, which was discussed in the film. So that is applicable at Hunt. It also featured really efficient plumbing fixtures for water savings, and it has an automated book retrieval system if you've ever been into Hunt. And so part of that was about reducing the square footage that the building actually needed to have. The BookBot allows so many more books to be housed in a smaller space. And so the library would have had to be much larger if it weren't for the BookBot. Some of the other things were solar shading that would help reduce some of the solar gain, because there's so many windows in Hunt Library, but also provide daylight. So it's kind of on both sides of that fence. There's also a rain garden and a green roof on Hunt that reduces the heat island effect in terms of the green roof, and then the rain garden is for stormwater runoff outside the building. So those are the big components of Hunt.
Nice. Are there other? Is it pretty much every new building is going to be LEED certified or have some sort of sustainability effort in building it, or is it specific ones?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our chancellor actually, at the time in 2008, made a commitment that all buildings over 20,000 square feet would be a minimum of LEED Silver certified. So whether that's a new building or whether that's a renovation. But we also incorporate those sustainable building components into smaller projects as well. So yeah, if you're interested to learn more about this, again, I encourage you to check out our buildings page on our sustainability site. But that it kind of goes into detail if you want to see about each individual building, also what that checklist looks like, even for the smaller buildings. So yeah, we do have a commitment for that at NC State.
Nice. So Carla, related to Energy Week that's coming up, is there, you talked about there's art, there's competitions, it seems like, for pitches and entrepreneurship. What are some of the things that you like to highlight and talk about in regards to sustainable energy at NC State? What are your top 3 things of here's a project that we did is really amazing, something that doesn't exist anywhere else?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to count to 3, but one thing I wanted to build on with what Lindsay just said was our commitment to energy reduction. I don't think we've talked about that yet, but back in, I think we've been using 2002 as our baseline, and our current goal is to reach a 40% energy intensity reduction. So that's energy that we use divided by gross square feet because we're constantly growing. So the goal is to reach 40% reduction. Right now we're at 37%, so we're getting really close. But it makes a lot of impact. Our energy budget's about $35 million a year because our campus is so big. So anything that we can do to reduce that energy consumption makes a big difference, both environmentally and also in terms of fiscal resources. That's one thing that another commitment in addition to that LEED commitment that was worth mentioning. Some exciting energy projects that we have, I think probably one of the newest ones is thermal energy storage on Centennial campus. So that if you go by there recently, it's just a very large tank that's stories and stories high, and it stores chilled water. And it basically allows us to store that chilled water and then deploy it during the day when electricity rates are highest. And then we make it at night when electricity rates are lowest. So it really allows us to save a fair amount of money. So that's one of the most recent energy projects that has happened on campus. But we're doing a lot of upgrades on Centennial campus to the infrastructure there. We have a lot of research there. And making sure that it is as reliable and the quality of power is good to make that research happen. I'll kick it back to Lindsay for one of the more exciting projects that's coming along soon. And it's at Fitzwillard Hall, which is the newest engineering building. And it has an exciting solar project that will be coming to fruition soon.
Yeah, thanks, Carla. Yes, we're putting a large, what we're going to call a medium to large solar PV installation on the top of Fitzwillard. So this is the building that is right next to Hunt Library, and it just is opening this fall for the first time. And so this is exciting for us because most of the solar installations, rooftop solar installations that we have on campus are what you would call small or demonstration size installations. So this is the first large one that we're doing. We planned for this project together with some of the College of Engineering faculty, actually. And what's unique about this is that we're doing it together with a battery storage project, a lithium-ion battery. And the battery does a little bit like what Carla was explaining with the thermal energy storage tank, where you're able to charge it at night when electricity rates are low, and you can expend it during the day when they're the highest or your peak load is the highest. And so in this instance, our peak load is also at the same time where our solar gain is the highest. So if we expend the battery at the same time that our peak solar gain is the highest, so we're going to clip that peak, is what they call it in the energy field, of your load profile. So this is exciting for us because we don't have a project like this. We've never done a battery storage project or a large solar rooftop project. So it's in design at this point, which means it's moving through that design process and will be installed in the coming months. So.
That's really great. Yeah, I was wondering if there was, since we are an engineering university, like was there some sort of working with the students or the faculty and kind of rolling out some of the research that they were doing in some sort of practical way, and that's really exciting to hear about. So is there anything else that you want to talk about as far as what NC State Sustainability Office is about and what the message you'd like to get out? We have people who are watching basically from around the world and across the United States, and this is our opportunity to shine and to advertise what we're doing.
Well, maybe one thing that we could point to, and Carla and I were chatting about this, is that, there is an interesting focus, an important focus that our office has taken and that our campus has taken around the theme of environmental justice. And so one of the events that's happening next week for Energy Week is an energy justice panel. So it's talking specifically about how energy projects like the siting of coal-fired power plants or their waste or pipelines and any number of energy projects and how those impact communities. And many times those are communities of color or lower income communities. And so there's a real connect and a real issue. And this is a nationwide issue. This is not a North Carolina issue, but a larger one. And so I guess I would encourage you, if you have any interest in this, it's a really interesting field. There's been recent projects in North Carolina that are applicable to us. The biggest one most recently is the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. It was a huge pipeline that was supposed to stretch from West Virginia through Virginia and North Carolina. And it recently was halted, actually, due to all of the opposition about the siting of that pipeline and through all of the low-income counties in eastern North Carolina, including the Lumbee Indian tribe. And so it's an interesting topic and also just embedded in our energy history and our the development of our country. And so we're looking forward to a really great conversation next week for Energy Week that's being moderated by a faculty member in the College of Natural Resources, Louis Rivers. And we have several folks that are going to come and talk from different perspectives: the community perspective, the environmental perspective, the energy perspective, the legal perspective. So it should be a great discussion.
Nice. That is pretty exciting. And this is almost everything you're doing is something that people can attend virtually. Is that correct?
Correct. They're all virtual events. If you go to go.ncsu.edu/energyweek, it will show you all the events, give you a little bit more details about them, and then there's a way that you can sign up. So we'll send you the link.
So go ncsu.edu.energyweek or /energyweek.
/energyweek. Yep.
All right, I'm going to put that in the comments so people can visit it. It's certainly, energy now is something that we all are thinking about. And it's a fascinating thing to read about what's happening in other countries where renewable energy sources are now suddenly becoming the cheapest way to make energy. And when we see that a renewable energy company is actually rated higher than ExxonMobil, just recently, last week, I think, that, we are beginning to turn that corner, which is really fascinating. We're here to see that happen. And it's great that you guys are pursuing that and talking about that and figuring out ways to implement it at the university level. Anything else you'd like to talk about while we're here? Or mention that we haven't brought up? If not,
Mostly covered it.
great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Jason, are you around?
I'm right here, and I am very happy that all this was so fascinating. I just can't, as we talked about before the episode, like I'm still hung up as a libraries employee about how the 21 miles of steam tunnels that control our HVAC. I know that's not something that is unheard of on a large campus, but like it sounds like there's just a whole other world that involves balloons and hot air balloons and steampunk helmets and stuff that maybe I'm just not seeing day to day at NC State, but like cool that we have it, Anyway, learn more about steampunk and also sustainability by visiting your library. And also, in general, thank you, Lindsay, Carla, and Skip for doing this. We're always excited to have visitors from all over campus, and we're really excited about the events that are happening next week, including the ones that the libraries are involved with too. So thanks so much for all the stuff you all are doing.
Excellent. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So remember to visit avgeeks.com for more info about the kinds of movies you watched tonight. You can also check out compilations of AV Geeks materials from the libraries. And you can also watch this episode again or watch other episodes of AV Geeks at the Hunt Library by visiting lib.ncsu.edu and just looking for that frame, looking for the events tab, and finding all of these. So our next show and our last of the semester is in 2 weeks on Friday, October 30th, called The Haunted Classroom, featuring a whole bunch of guests, graduate students from NC State's Film Studies Department and English Department. And plus Skip, of course, viewing and discussing the scariest educational films ever made. I'm not sure if that's real, but I love horror movie taglines that promise something, and it sure delivers it too.
Yeah. These are really great. They picked some really great ones that have supernatural aspects to them and are based on really scary short stories. So it's a really great. It'll be a really good show, and it's the day before Halloween, so it'll put you right in the mood. Right. So a different kind of energy brought upon by the thousands of calories that you will instead purchase to have mailed to your house and eat, alone while watching AV Geeks on Friday the 30th at 6 p.m. So tune in then and have a safe Halloween after it, but we'll remind you to do that before then. But between now and then, come up with a good costume that looks good on Zoom, and remember you can watch previous stuff and this episode again if you need to. So thanks again for spending time with us tonight and all semester. We look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. And thanks everybody again. Thanks for being here.